Namaste. So this is a continuation of a previous video where we started the physiological interpretation of Saptashati based on the revelations about the same achieved by the Upasana of Devi in this Navaratra as well as uh, from several years. The fifth shloka is Tasya palayatah samyak prajaputra nivorasan babhushatravo bhupah kola vidvamsinastada. While the king, the Suratha, was ruling righteously, protecting his people like his own sons, enemies, rulers bent on destroying him arose. So King Suratha and the role of homeostasis. Suratha's governance over his people parallels the brain's regulatory control over the body, maintaining the homeostasis, the body's internal balance. Just as King Suratha protects his subjects with care, the nervous system constantly adjusts to maintain optimal conditions in response to external and internal threats. The hypothalamus in the brain serves as the king of homeostasis, regulating essential functions like body temperature, hormonal levels, and fluid balance. Of course, today, the eighth day of Navaratri, where we have done the upasana of Mahagauri iti Chastamam, we call it as. So here we see the importance of hypothalamus, which is a self-controlled center and also links to the endocrine gland. So it is related to the Vijnana Chakram. Okay, in the Dasha Chakravada, it is Vijnana Chakram. Uh, it has the anterior and posterior hypothalamus, which corresponds to the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nerves. So that is the king brain. That's a suratha, essential for his body functions like temperature control, hormone levels, and fluid balance. In the context of putra nivo rasan, like his own sons, putra niva aurasan, nivaha aurasan. So this represents the cells, tissues, and organs that the brain nurtures. Brain here is Suratha, and is that brain is going to the nurture the cells, tissues, and organs like just like the its own sons, and regulates with precision also. The endocrine system, specifically the pituitary gland, that plays a vital role in releasing the hormones to adjust body processes. Praja, or the subjects in the verse, symbolizes the body's physiological systems. Prat jayate iti praja. So prat is the digestive, respiratory, and cardiovascular, which must be governed by the brain for smooth functioning. Okay, that's how the Suratha and its Putra are revealed in terms of physiology. The rise of enemies here is nothing but the invasion of pathogens. Enemies, Shatravaha is the word used in this particular shloka, who rise against the king Surata, symbolize pathogens such as virus, bacteria, or toxins, which can invade the body and threaten its ability. Kola Vidvamsinaha, destructive enemies. Okay, Kola Vidvamsinaha is the destructive enemies. They represent the external stressors or disease causing agents. There may be several ones like that that compromise the body's system, the several systems. The immune system, much like Surata's army, must respond to defend the kingdom, the body, against these invaders. When pathogens enter the body, they trigger the immune response, with white blood cells, WBC, which are also called as leukocytes, acting as defenders to eliminate threats. However, just as the verse describes a formidable threat rising against the king, certain diseases, especially autoimmune disorders or chronic infections, become persistent enemies that the immune system struggles to contain. The next point here is the psychosomatic balance and stress response. The mind body connection is essential here, where psychological stress, symbolized by the adversaries, can lead to psychological disruptions. In neuroscience, prolonged exposure to stress leads to the release of cortisol by the adrenal glands, which, while necessary for short term stress response, can cause harm if produced in excess. Anything that is produced in excess or becomes very lower than the prescribed level, that is going to cause harm. Here it is excess. This is similar to how Surata's reign becomes threatened by rising adversaries that jeopardize his kingdom's peace. The fight or flight response triggered by stress activities, the sympathetic nervous system preparing the body for defense, but when prolonged, this can lead to chronic conditions such as hypertension, digestive issues, and immunosuppression. Okay. The next shloka is तस्य तैरभवद्युत्य मतिप्रबलदण्डिनः न्यूनैरपि सतैर्युद्धे कूलावित्वंसिभिर्जितः. He fought a battle with those strong adversaries, and though they were fewer in number, they were powerful enough to defeat him. This is the internal battle, immune system versus pathogens. The battle king Surata faces can be compared to the immune system's battle with infections. Even though the pathogens or adversaries may be fewer in number, their strength and virulence can overpower the body's defenses, much like how bacterial infections or autoimmune conditions can overwhelm the immune system despite being small in scale. In terms of cellular biology, even a few virulent bacteria or cancer cells can invade the immune system's detection, causing significant damage if they replicate and spread. The defeat in battle signifies the breakdown of the immune system's ability to neutralize these invaders, leading to chronic illness or systemic infection. Then there will be adrenal overload and burnout. The powerful adversaries can also symbolize stressors that cause the adrenal glands to release cortisol and adrenaline continuously, leading to adrenal fatigue. Chronic stress depletes the body's reserves and weakens its ability to respond to new threats, much like a king's army that becomes exhausted after prolonged battles. Okay, in endocrinology, this state of adrenal overload can result in fatigue, mental fog, hormonal imbalance, and even depression. The body, despite having the mechanisms to defend itself, becomes overwhelmed when stress is sustained, leading to a compromised immune system and increased susceptibility to infections. Then the next point is the psychosomatic defeat and mental health. From a mental health perspective, the verse reflects the mental battles faced during the periods of intense emotional strain. Though the mind might encounter only a few negative thought patterns, their intensity can overwhelm mental defenses, leading to anxiety, depression, and burnout. This aligns with cognitive psychology, where repeated exposure to even a small number of stressful situations can have a cumulative effect on mental well being, causing neural fatigue and the depletion of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. These neurotransmitters are critical for mood regulation, and their depletion leads to emotional exhaustion. The next shloka is ततस्वपुरमायातो निजदेशाधिपो भवत् आक्रान्तस्य महाभागस्तैस्तदा प्रबलारिभिः. Then He returned to his own city and became the ruler of his own domain. But he was again besieged by powerful enemies. The first point here to be observed is the homeostasis restored, yet recurring threats. King Surata's return to his own city represents the body's attempt to restore homeostasis after battling stress or illness. After a temporary recovery, the body returns to its normal functioning state, symbolized by the king reclaiming his kingdom. However, the recurring enemies, Prabhalari Bihi, Pari means enemy, Prabhalari. So they represent the chronic health conditions or relapses where the body faces renewed challenges. In chronic diseases like autoimmune disorders, diabetes, or hypertension, the body might stabilize after treatment, but recurrences often follow. These persistent enemies keep reappearing, requiring constant regulation by the immune system and endocrine systems. The body's resilience is tested repeatedly, just as Surata's kingdom faces continual threats. The chronic stress and the HPA axis. The HPA axis, which is nothing but hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, plays a crucial role in the body's response to stress. After a period of stress, the body attempts to return to a normal state, like King Suratha returning to his domain, but chronic stress leads to the persistent activation of the HPA axis, resulting in cortisol dysregulation. This state of constant vigilance weakens the body's ability to recover fully, much like a kingdom that is always under siege. Chronic activation of the HPA axis leads to cognitive decline, weakened immune response, and fatigue, symbolizing how King Suratha, despite regaining his kingdom, is continually challenged by external forces. Mental resilience and recurrence of trauma. Psychologically, the return to one's own city represents the mind's effort to regain stability after a traumatic experience. However, unresolved psychological trauma can resurface, much like enemies attacking again. Post traumatic stress disorder (PTSD) reflects this dynamic where individuals may seem to recover, but triggers can reignite the psychological pattern, leading to flashbacks, anxiety, and emotional distress. The verse illustrates the resilience of the mind and body constantly under the threat from external or internal factors, symbolizing the ongoing struggle to maintain physical and mental equilibrium. Next shloka, eighth shloka is Amatyairbalibirdushtairdurbhalasya duratmabhihe kosho balam chapavrutam tatrapi swapure tataha. He, the king Suratha, was further weakened by his ministers who were corrupt and selfish. His wealth and resources were taken from him even in his own city. Let's see the important points here. The corruption of internal systems, which leads to the dysfunction in cellular processes. The ministers, amatya is the word used for the ministers here, represents the regulatory systems within the body that maintain its optimal functioning. In human physiology, these systems include the endocrine system, nervous system, and immune system, which work together to ensure that cells, organs, and tissues function properly. When these systems become corrupt or dysfunctional, it leads to systemic imbalances. The corruption mentioned in the verse can be interpreted as cellular dysfunction or metabolic imbalances, where the body's natural processes are hindered. For instance, in the context of endocrine disorders, hormonal imbalances such as in thyroid or adrenal function can weaken the body, much like how King Surata's ministers drain his strength. Additionally, immune dysregulation, where the immune system attacks the body's own tissues, as seen in autoimmune diseases, mirrors the destructive influence of corrupt internal systems. This results in a weakened state where the body is unable to defend itself effectively from external threats. Loss of wealth, that is, depletion of energy resources. The kosha, wealth, being apahkritam, taken away, is a metaphor of the loss of vital energy or nutrients within the body. Kosha can also be correlated to the jiva kosha, which is nothing but the cell. So at the very subtle level, it is a cell, and at a little bit higher level, it's nutrients or energy or the nutrients within the body. In physiology, this can refer to the loss of cellular energy due to inefficient metabolism. The mitochondria, known as the powerhouse of the cell, are responsible for producing the ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency of the body. When the mitochondria are compromised, it leads to energy depletion, much like the king's wealth being taken away by his corrupt ministers. Nutritional deficiencies, such as lack of essential vitamins and minerals, also mirror this condition. For instance, deficiencies in B vitamins, magnesium, or iron can impair the body's ability to produce energy that is going to result in fatigue, weakness, and cognitive decline. Physiological corruption, which is nothing but the dysfunctional organs and systems. The corrupt ministers can also be seen as malfunctioning organs or dysregulated systems within the body. For example, the liver, which is responsible for detoxification and metabolic processes, can become dysfunctional due to toxins, alcohol, or poor nutrition. This leads to an accumulation of toxins in the body, similar to how King Surata's wealth is mismanaged, weakening his kingdom. Hormonal imbalances in glands like the thyroid or adrenal glands disrupt the balance of metabolism, energy production, and immune function. In case of the thyroid, conditions like hypothyroidism leads to sluggish metabolism, weight gain, and fatigue, weakening the body's defenses, much like the king losing control of his wealth and power. So we have covered four shlokas and tried to interpret them in the physiological way by the revelations, divine revelations that we uh, got from the Devi in this Navaratri and also from the previous several Navaratri Upasanas. Thank you, one and all.